We're welcoming back, by popular demand, uh, Pam Wiznitzer. Of course, is not welcome back because you grew up in our congregation and your family is still extremely active. But Pam, we're so grateful for these Zoom mixologies that you've been doing for us during this difficult time. You have been making our difficult times a little bit sweeter and a little bit better, a lot better. So we had to get a Purim mixology. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Pam.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's nice to see everybody again. And almost Chag Purim Sameach. We're almost there. Coinciding with St. Patrick's Day this year, we really knew how to plan the calendar, right? Give us two Adars and we'll do really big things to the regular Gregorian calendar. Just watch us go. It's nice to see everybody. Hello, Rabbi and Rabbi. It's great to see both of you here. So for those who may not know me, I know most people on here, but I'm Pamela Wiznitzer. I am the daughter of Debbie and Max Wiznitzer. I grew up in B'nai Ashern. I helped carry Torahs from Beth Am over there. I'm a very proud and active member of the shul. And I still enjoy the fact that I get to be involved in this capacity, even though I'm far away in New York and I've been away for over half my life at this point. I still get to interact with the congregation that raised me. And there's nothing better than celebrating when it's a holiday, especially a really fun holiday where you're supposed to drink, right? There's not every holiday where I think most Jewish holidays, unless we're fasting, have alcohol in some capacity because we have to say a bracha over wine, right? But here they say you're supposed to get so schlickered, right? Schnicker, they say that you can't tell the difference between good and evil, between Haman and Mordechai, they say. So, with that said, it means we should have something to drink. Now, I do like to say that it is important to say that during these holidays we should be drinking responsibly. Overconsumption is a really big issue. So even when we are drinking, let's make sure we're being responsible because the reason we are drinking is to enjoy the moment, and we can't enjoy it unless we are really fully present. So it should just be something to enhance, maybe not take away from the day. And that's my little PSA. I'm excited because the two drinks that we have are really great. And in fact, they can kind of be done in a non-alcoholic fashion if you wanted to. You can always substitute a grape juice in place of the wine. And you can also substitute like a really, oh, we've got a mixologist here. Someone is ready, very ready. Of course, Richard Berkowitz is dressed in Purim costume already, which I'm very excited about. Right?
What costume?
Oh, no costume. Just this is.
Oh,
This
here,
is
I'll wear this. Is that?
right. There it is.
Nope.
Perfect.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I like the arm guards and everything. You're right on time. So what I want to do today, this is so great. I really wanted to bring to like two different drink options. One that is high proof, something with full proof with a lot with extra spirit in there, and one that's low proof because sometimes you want to drink something that kind of eases you into the night but doesn't necessarily have to have as much alcohol. And something that is trending these days are what we consider low proof or no proof drinking, which is also what we call a style, which is aperitif or aperitivo, which definitely stems from the way that Italians drink in the afternoon, right? A nice aperitif to get things going. So we've got two different drinks where I wanted to also show you how we can use a lot of similar ingredients to make two completely different drinks. And what I do like here is our ability to kind of open up a bottle of wine and be able to use it in two different cocktails. So you're not just using ingredients and then not using it for the other. We hate waste, so we try to utilize as many things as we can. I will say for class today, if you have questions, since we're a small enough group, if you have them, please just ask them as you're going. We don't have to wait until the very end. If you have made hamantashen for any reason, like I have, please feel free to eat them as we're going because you might need a nash and you might get hungry as we are making our cocktails, right? And also just make sure you have some water with you because it's always important to make sure that we are nice and hydrated as we're making drinks. Yes, I see Rabbi Hal has definitely got that going on. And if you feel in the mood that you would like to throw on a mask or dress up for any reason, I give you full opportunity to go and do that. Go off screen, come back, show us what you've got. Sound good? Okay, phenomenal. So as I sort of alluded to earlier, Purim has been and always will be one of my favorite holidays of all time. I think it's wrapped up in a lot of nostalgia for me as a kid. For those anyone here who was at Beth Am, we used to have this huge traffic light that would go green and red. I think we brought that over to B'nai Ashur. One of my greatest traditions of when we say Haman and when we don't say Haman, how we interact, how we engage. When you really start looking at the text, and you look at the story, it is so different when you look at it from an adult lens versus a child's lens. And something that is such a theme in there is the way that King Ahasuerus acted and the influence that King Ahasuerus was often under in making decisions. Let's just get real. Let's cut to the chase. He was a drunk most of the time. Okay? And I think it's okay to say that, even when you read the text. He was feasting for months and like weeks and months at a time. Who does that? He demanded that his first wife, Vashti, kind of go naked in front of everybody and parade around and show off for them. Who does that? So with that said, I'm thinking, King Ahasuerus, you need to slow your roll down. You need something that you can ease into. You're enjoying yourself. You don't need something that's as high proof. But you're also going to want something that looks like a goblet full of goodness, which is why the first drink that we're going to make is what I call Ahasuerus' cup. Because what we're doing is we're making a play on a spritz or an aperitivo style drink, something that, and kind of also like a sangria, but very easy to execute. Okay, so I love this drink because this is a drink that you can batch together in a pitcher ahead of time. If you didn't have time to shake it, you could stir it all together, put it in your fridge, and then when people come over, serve it over ice. It definitely has much more appeal, and you'll see as we shake it because of the way that with aeration, with juices and wine, what happens to the drink. Okay, just want to make sure and clarification before we make this drink that everybody has the tools that they need and necessary in order to make these drinks. So first things first, please make sure you have some type of shaker. You may not have a shaker like I do, and that's okay. You may not have a shaker like Richard does because he's a professional bartender. And if you don't, you can also use a mason jar, a Tupperware that seals and closes. A protein shaker works really well. Rabbi Weiss over there is showing us his great combo shaker. I love it. There you go. Fantastic. We all have shakers. For those of you who have the shakers like Richard and Rabbi, please make sure you take both the top pieces apart. The biggest reason they will get stuck when you're shaking is when you don't have them all dismantled and then put it together before you shake it. When you have pieces that are already together, it captures air in hard, difficult ways to then break it apart. Okay. Number two, we need the ability to measure our cocktails out. So I have something here called a jigger, and a jigger is a measuring device we use to measure units of liquid that go into a drink. If you do not have one of these, do not fret. You can also use a tablespoon. 1 tablespoon equals a half an ounce, and I love that. And if you don't have that, you can also use 1/4 of a cup. 1/4 of a cup will be 2 ounces. Sometimes it is easier that way to measure out certain ingredients. If you have one of these and it doesn't have measuring lines or measurements on the side and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know how many ounces is in here, do not fret. Grab a tablespoon, grab some water, and see how many times your tablespoon will fit into a side of your jigger, right? For every tablespoon that you can pour in there, that's a half an ounce. So maybe your jigger is 1 ounce to 2 ounces, maybe it's 1 to 1.5. That is the best way to measure to see how much liquid can be held in there, okay? Last thing we're going to need, besides ice, is we're going to need glassware. So for King Ahasuerus' cup, I'm going to be using a wine glass traditionally, and I like it because most homes are going to have wine glasses or wine goblets. For our other drink that we're going to have, the Shushan Sour 2.0, which we'll talk about as it is kind of a play of what happened last year, we are going to use a lowball glass if you have one. We lowball glass with ice. So I will give like 2 seconds if people need to grab that stuff. Please keep the ice in your freezer though. You know, my dad said he was going to be on here. I'm a little mad. Maybe he's still at work. I know. It's okay. What are you going to do? He probably got stuck at work. It's fine. He's still proud.
We'll send him the recording.
Perfect. I'm sure he'll watch it. I'm sure he'll watch it. Okay, great. So we have everything in place. Fantastic. So really, truly, when we come down to this drink, it's kind of a play on a drink. Back in the day, we had drinks called crustas, and crustas were shaken, refreshing drinks that there would be sugar on the rim on the side. We're not doing the sugar rim here, but the idea and the essence of it is you're having something, a lighter base, So a lot of times it'd be wine or port or sherry, and you would shake it with some juices and also some sweetening source, sugar of some sort. And that would be a Cresta. And they're really great because they are very refreshing. You can change things seasonally, right? And they're easy to execute. Oh, good. We've got a cat in the frame. I always love when pets are here. So first thing I want us to do is I want us just to get our wine bottles open. So if you haven't already opened your red wine, please do that. As I mentioned before, Manischewitz really doesn't cut it here. And if you're upset about that, I totally get it. Listen, I love me some Manischewitz, and I have made plenty of cocktails with it, including some things specifically for Passover, okay? But for here, what we need is we need a dry red wine that we can mix in for our cocktail, okay? So you can kind of use any of them. I will say like Pinot Noirs are quite light, so something with more robust nature works a little bit better, but as long as you have one, that's great. So let's get those open because we want our wines open to aerate a little bit, make sure they're not corked at all. All right, so I'll give you all a second to open it up. Great. Rabbi Weiss is like ready to drink from the bottle, it looks like, right? I should also mention if at any point, yeah, that's it. If at any moment you want to like just be off of mute, you definitely can do that. So don't feel free to jump in at any point. You can do that as well. For this drink, additionally, and I want to make sure we have this ingredient ready if you did not prepare it beforehand, we need something that is called honey syrup. So I purposely didn't make it ahead of time because I want to show you how easy it is to do. This is my honey syrup. See how easy that moves up and down? This is honey. You see how slow that moves, like molasses? The idea in making a honey syrup is that it helps to pre-liquefy the liquid. So then when you are mixing in your drink, you don't get that glob of honey stuck at the bottom that you can't shake in with your cocktail. So when you thin out honey, it gives it a better ability to mix within your drink. The easiest way to do so, and I can eyeball it, I've done it for a while, but if you want to measure it, we're doing equal parts honey to water. So what I like to do is I kind of like to transfer honey from one honey bear to another. So I'm going to put honey in my honey bear. We'll see how much I put in. I'm putting in about 1.5 ounces. Okay. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some room temperature or a little bit warm water. And I'm going to fill it up just the same amount of honey that I put into my honey bear. Perfect. And then the easy part, it's like a grogger, everybody. We shake it like your grogger. And what's so easy about this is that within 5 to 10 seconds, you will have honey syrup. You do not have to put it on boiling water. There's a lot of cocktail books that'll tell you to do that. It's unnecessary, okay? Honey is the easiest thing to thin out in a second. Pro tip, if you know when you have your honey bears and there's only a teeny bit of honey left at the very bottom, put a little water in there, thin it out, and keep it as honey syrup in your refrigerator or outside your fridge, right? Never waste anything. Always use it. All right, so we have our honey syrup ready. Another thing we're going to need for this is we're going to need a lemon. We're going to need an orange and our ability to juice it. So make sure you have a juicer available. Oh, I see a great martini being consumed. Lovely. Did you make one for all of us? What kind of martini is that?
It's gin.
Oh, gorgeous. Dirty?
Blue cheese olives, but not dirty.
There we go. Living the good life, aren't you?
I leave the fancy stuff to the experts. Martinis are easy.
Yeah. Martinis are, you know what? They say martinis are difficult for some people. So, all right. So when we make these drinks, the most important thing that we have in these cocktails, because we're adding acidity and sweetness, is almost an equal proportion of both of them together. Acid and sweetness are balancers in a drink. Okay. It's kind of the reason why we like those sour candies that, the candies that have like a sweet and sour sugar on the outside. We love those. Or if you coat a lemon with some sugar, you want to eat it. It tastes really good. If you have acidity in there, but you don't add any sweetness, your drink will be off balance. And if you add a lot of sugar, but you have no acidity in there, it'll be very sweet and it will be unbalanced. So what we want to do first is make sure that we have that equal amount of sweetness and sour that is being put into this drink, okay? Also, mind you, that wine is very tannic and very dry. So in this case also, the sweetness will be balancing both the acidity and the tannic nature of this wine. So we might need to add a little more sweetness, which is why I've called for 1 ounce of honey syrup. So let's get started. When we make our drinks, we like to do them from our least expensive ingredient to our most expensive ingredient. So we're first going to start with that honey syrup that we made. Okay, so let's get out our measuring devices. Maybe it's your jigger, maybe it's your tablespoon, and we're going to measure out 1 ounce of honey syrup. Okay, and I always like to put in a little bit less. Some people want to put in like maybe an ounce and a half, depending on your palate. My grandmother, my 92-year-old grandmother, who's in Miami right now and otherwise Chicago, makes chicken soup and she barely puts any salt in it. And I asked her a long time ago, I said, why don't you season your soup before we get it? And she goes, you can always like make a soup, you know, and put salt in it. But once you put the salt in it, you can't take it out. And if you over season it, the soup is bad. So it's always better to pull back on the sweetness more than any other ingredient. Sweetness is like salt. It's better to pull back on it and add less in the beginning and then taste it before you shake it and see if you want more. So that is one of the biggest things in making a cocktail. Okay. All right. So we have 1 ounce of honey in there, honey water. Next thing we're going to do is let's add our acidity. So I'm going to call for 0.75 ounces. And if you're like, Pam, you have 1 ounce of honey syrup, that's not equal. Remember, we have 4 ounces of tannic red wine in there. Okay, so we need to make sure that we also balance that out. So I have my juicer here. If you have a juicer, you're going to place the citrus side down. Oh, okay, maybe you're like Rabbi Weiss and you have it pre-juiced. Good job. All right, you're going to place it with I call it the tush or the butt up, okay? And you're going to squeeze. Now, if you don't own a juicer, here's what I'm going to say. I know that Hanukkah was a few months ago, but every day should be a day that we celebrate, okay? So if you don't own a juicer, go ahead and buy yourself one. Maybe it's your Shabbos gift this week because you should get a gift every Shabbos. I believe in that. You know, if we're doing a good job for 6 days and you're like, oh, we rest on the 7th. This costs $5 to $7. It is the greatest addition to any kitchen. You'll use it so often. You're going to want it on Shavuot to like put on your salmon when you want some lemon on it, okay? You're going to want it for all the cocktails that I teach you. You know, moving forward. And actually, I always say this, get 2 of them. So one of them is kosher for Pesach. Okay? So while you're at it, get 2. That's right. Make sure you always have a Pesach set of tools for that holiday. You're going to need it to get through those seders sometimes. Okay. Next part is we are going to add a little orange juice. So we've added the lemon juice. Now we're going to add some fresh orange juice. And I love this part. And if you don't have fresh orange juice, that is okay. And if you do, even better. So you can use the things like Tropicana. That works. Orange is really great here because it's going to add like a little bit more roundness to this drink, okay? Grapes and oranges are fruits that obviously complement one another. And this is where we get more of like a round flavor into this drink. So I'm going to juice up this half right here. Awesome. Juicing here, and we're going to add 0.75 ounces. And again, the other thing that's nice about this orange juice is that orange juice isn't actually very acidic. So what it's going to do is also play nicely with the wine, but it's also going to round out the tannic quality of it. Okay. Now, before we add the wine, I'm going to do one last thing. We're going to add a small little pinch of cinnamon. Did everyone have their ground cinnamon? I want you to add just a small pinch, not too much, not overwhelming. Just a little bit that we are going to shake up through your drink. Okay, so just a tiny, tiny little small pinch. And what the cinnamon is going to do, cinnamon is a wonderful spice that's really going to bring out a lot of the flavors that are within the drink, okay? And it adds this beautiful little spice note that kind of sings, there it is, that sings throughout your cocktail. And spices are honestly a really great way to always add robust, dynamic flavor to your drink with minimal effort and minimal cost. So you just have to think a lot about the spices that are being put in and how they complement each other. I think something else, the reason why I like it, when I think about spices and wine, I also think about Havdalah. I like to engage as many holidays in there as possible. So, you know, it's kind of like it's kind of flavors that we naturally put together as well. I also kind of think that like Vashti and Esther were quite spicy. So this is an ode to them. That's right. They were quite spicy for their time. All right. Last thing is we're going to add in that wine, the yayin. And if you want to say a bracha, as you pour it in there, Rabbi, I don't know if there's a bracha for like pouring the wine. I know there's for consuming, but who knows? Maybe there is one.
I don't know one for pouring, but we can make one up.
So we're going to add 4 ounces of red wine. Again, we want this to be close to being what like a full pour of wine would be, which would normally be around 6 ounces. But we're making this more refreshing and low proof. And Rabbi, because this wine, this is a great moment of learning. I think that's why these classes are so fun, because we have a lot of authorities in the room. When you have a drink that uses wine as the base, yet you're mixing it with other juices, does this now fall into charcoal, or can you still say Borei Pri Hagafen?
Well, that's a really good question. If the majority of it is wine, then you can still say Borei Pri Hagafen.
All right, folks, this is still a Borei Pri Hagafen moment in front of you, okay?
I'd hedge your bets and do both.
That's right. It's better to be careful. All right, so here's my rule. Here's my rule always in cocktails. Unless you know 100%, you've made a drink a million times and you know the recipe, it is so important that we taste something before we shake something. So I like to give it a little stir. You can use any kind of spoon. I'll take a little bit and I place it on the back of my hand and I taste it. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Now, if this is too dry for you, this is your opportunity. If you would like to add a little bit more sweetness, add some more sweetness, right? Again, this is why I say I always start with an ounce of the honey syrup, because some people's palates will love the way that this tastes. Some people will say this is not sweet enough for me. And this is your time that you get to tweak and add things as you would like into this drink. Good? We're tasting great? All right. Well, we're about to shake. Do not shake yet. This always happens. Do not shake yet. What we need to do first is we need to ice up our cups and ice up our tins simultaneously. So I'd like us all to go to our freezers and grab some ice. And I'd like us to add some, not too much, just some ice into our glass. And then add some ice, not too much, just, probably somewhere between 5 to 7 ice cubes into our shaker. You never want to over dilute your shaker when you're shaking a drink that's going back on ice, because then you'll have an over diluted drink. Okay. Shaking 101 really fast. So we're going to shake a few times. I want to just make a few things clear. First off, it is so important to know where the exits of your tin are, because that's where your hands have to seal over it. Okay. So the exits here, 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 here. You want to put your hands around the areas where it could go awry, where it could split apart. Number 2 is that your arms are magnificent things, and they have a long wingspan, and they also have these wrists that follow through. Do not ignore the ability to shake and have your wrists follow through. Number 3, shaking in front of you could yield clothes getting dirty. If you're worried about that, the best thing to do is to shake over a shoulder, as anything can go behind you, okay? Number 4, shaking is moving the ice from the bottom to the top to the bottom to the top in a repetitive motion. You want to aerate, agitate, and activate your drink. So if you're shaking like this, or you're shaking like this, or you're shaking like this, you're not getting that motion that you need in order to make that drink expand. Okay, so it's so important that we do whatever we can with moving our arms up and down to shake it. And the last little tidbit is it's easier to shake when you're standing up, but if you want to sit, you do you. Okay, we are going to shake for about 8 seconds. Are we all ready? Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8. Okay. Yes. All right. So let's open those up. There you go, Rabbi. Woo! And this is why I love shaking this drink. If you look inside your shaker, you're going to see this beautiful foam that's on top. Okay? So we are going to now strain this into our glass. Because you didn't add too much ice, it should hit almost right at the top of the glass. Oh my gosh. And do you see that beautiful foam that's at the top of it? Ah, I love this. And then at the end, if you'd like, and this is what I like to do, I like to add like a little pinch of cinnamon just on top. And while people might think you might be drinking just a regular cup of wine, The joke's on them because what you have in front of you is a gorgeous, gorgeous cocktail. Okay. And sometimes what I like to say is instead of doing the grogger every time we hear Haman's name, why should we be booing at him when we should be celebrating that we are around and he didn't persist, right? And he didn't survive. So I think the new game should be every time you hear Haman, you take a drink. Yeah? And with a drink like this, you certainly can do that. So, Rabbi, do you want to lead us in bracha?
Sure, let's do it together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hakafen.
So we made ours with Finger Lakes Riesling because that's what was opened at the house, and it's still delicious.
Yeah, you can definitely listen. This doesn't have to be red wine. This is a fun cocktail because you actually can use white wine or even rosé wine with it. And some other fun things you can do. You can always switch out orange juice for things like peach juice. If you get from a store, you buy peach juice, or nectarine juice is also a really fun thing to switch in and out. So you can make some variations on this based upon how you see it. But it's nice, it's cold, it's refreshing, and you definitely can drink this as you're reading Megillah. And I think if he drank something at this pace, not the pace that Achashverosh was going at, he may have been a more level-headed person. But I was not in Shushan, so I can't totally speak to that,
Hey, Pam, is there a rule of thumb around what kind of drinks or when you shake as opposed to stir?
Yeah, and so that's a very easy rule of thumb. When you're shaking something, the idea is you want to add in aeration. You want to add small bubbles in there. You want to expand flavors. And a lot of times those are going to be things that have citrus, have intense sugars, have vegetables or fruits that you need to break up, anything with herbs. Those are things that need to be shaken because you need the ice to literally ground things up. Think about a margarita. You want that little air pockets that are in there to explode. Mm-hmm. Stirred cocktails are going to be those in which use pretty much ingredients that are bitters, some sugars, and spirits. You want to create and you want to maintain, I should say, the velvety texture of the cocktail. It should taste as if it just was poured out from a bottle. So those are going to be drinks more like your Negronis, your Manhattans, your Martinis, old fashions. And if you think about those drinks, you're never trying to force air in there. You're not trying to disrupt the liquid because there's no acidity in there, right? There's no hard fruit in there or dairy in there, right? You have to open up. And instead, it should look pretty clear, like it just got poured from a bottle. So you always want to stir those because what you're doing is folding in the cold instead of forcing it in there with air.
Got it.
That's what stirring does. Stirring does folds in the cold, so it keeps that beautiful texture instead of disrupting.
Got it. Thank you.
Great question. I will say, as we're enjoying this, what I need us to do is quickly rinse out our tins, okay? Because we're going to make another drink, and I don't want your tins to be sticky. The other thing about this drink that I really love, and I should point out, is that if you want to make a picture of this, but you want to look very fancy for your friends when they come over before Megillah reading, you can also make a picture of this, and then when people come over, you can say, oh my gosh, would you like a Achashverosh's cup? Hold on. And you pour it from the pitcher into a shaker. You shake really quickly and pour it out in a glass. What I love about that, it's easy home entertainment, which gives people some of a show, right? It gives people a show. And it puts minimal work on you. So you still get to look like the host with the most without having to do a lot of excessive work. Okay. So for those who were here last year, we made Shushan Sours, which is one of my favorite drinks that I teach a lot of times during Purim. And because obviously one of my favorite things to eat during Purim are Oznei Haman or Hamantashen, right? And what we love the most about it is if you're going to make it really quickly, you can just use jam in the middle. And it's great because we have so many holidays where jam is the middle filling of what is we're eating.
Nice. We would like this.
Right? Now we have Hamantashen. So what I'd like to do is to make drinks that kind of incorporate a lot of the flavors that we already have at the table. What I do love about Hamantashen is that there's a billion different flavors. So we could have made a poppy seed drink totally that involves making an intense syrup. I didn't want to do that with all of you. But Jam is so great because there's so many, where's my jam? There's so many different, oh, here it is. There's so many different flavors and so many different opportunities that you can put together in this drink. So what's great about this next drink, which is a play on a New York sour, which is a classic cocktail, is that the sweetness source that we have in this drink no longer comes from the honey or a simple syrup. It comes from instead the jam. And based upon what flavors you like, maybe you like raspberry, maybe you like grape, maybe you like orange, apricot, strawberry, you can use any of them in collaboration with the base spirit. So we'll talk about flavor combinations to make this drink. What I will offer up here is this. This drink can be made with or without egg white. Now I'll get my egg out now because I waited for this. I will show it with an egg white. And if you're thinking, why an egg white? Eggs are merely texturizers in drinks. You do not have to make this with an egg white. If you choose to, I will guide you as to how we will crack it into the tin. And if you don't, just leave that step, okay? And it's totally safe. You won't be harmed. You'll have a leg up for Pesach when it comes to the time for Beitza. But for now, it's just a fun tactic, and it's a fun technique to show how to make this drink, okay? So New York Sour is a really classic cocktail that we have in which we're going to layer wine on top of your drink, which is great. Oh, it's okay, don't worry. Tell everyone I say hi. So New York Sour is a great drink. We're basically taking a drink like a whiskey sour and we place wine on top. And yes, Richard, we can definitely substitute aquafaba, which is chickpea brine, for the egg white if you would like to. That is something that you can do. Here what we're going to do is just make a slight substitution of our sweetness instead of a simple syrup and use jam. And we already have a bottle of wine open. So what's going to be very fun is it's going to be more flavored, more intense version of this drink, which is great. So we're going to need our tins again. Right? And remember, as we talked about earlier, we talked about balancing sweetness and sour in a drink. When it comes to adding jam into your cocktails, it is best to do it by the tablespoon. Okay, remember 1 tablespoon equals a ½ ounce. So what I use jam, and I should make it very clear, I never use jelly, I always use jam, and there's a big reason for that. Jelly is going to be a lot more gelatinous. It's very hard to break up. It's very difficult to break up in your drink. Jam is going to be a lot easier because it has a consistency that is able to be incorporated into your cocktails a lot easier, right? It doesn't have the same consistency as the same hold that jelly is going to have. So the way that I like to look at it is this. I like to take a tablespoon and I like to do what I call an oversized tablespoon. So there should be like a little mound on top of it that comes over it, and I place it at the bottom of the tin. Additionally, I like to keep my tablespoon in here because I will use it to stir up this cocktail to get every bit of jam out of the tablespoon. So grab a tablespoon of whatever jam you want to use. Perfect, and place it in there and leave your tablespoon in there. Gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, great. Next thing is going to be our evening out of flavors. So remember, this is a sour style cocktail. We are going to need something that balances out that jam, and that's going to be our citrus. So let's get those juicers out again, and let's get that lemon out again. My last lemon was very juicy. It actually gave me 0.75 ounces. But we are going to do 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. Oh my gosh, this is a juicy lemon. It's a good time for lemons right now. Let me tell you. And we're going to place that into our tin. And I will say at this point, you can kind of stir it up, and I can tell you because of the lemon juice, it has emptied out my tablespoon. So if you spin it around a whole bunch at the bottom of your glass, you can empty out your spoon. Okay. Next step is going to be adding in a spirit of your choice. So here you can kind of use anything. I like to navigate myself more towards an aged spirit. I tend to find that whiskeys, rums, and brandies play a little better here. But if you're somebody who's like dead set on a gin or a tequila, absolutely you can go that route. I pretty much like to stick with the brown spirits. I'm going to use a whiskey here, and we're going to use 2 ounces. 2 ounces is really the cap or the amount of spirit that we always like to use in a drink for a few reasons. Number one, it helps to maintain balance. So we kind of make a lot of our cocktail recipes all around the idea of 2 ounces in total. Okay, that's really what we make it at. But the other reason that we like to keep it at 2 ounces is because if I have you at my bar and I serve you 4 cocktails in half an hour, I know I've given you 8 ounces of alcohol. I'm probably going to stop serving you for a bit, right? Yeah, so it is to make sure that you're safe. So that's the other reason that we like to do it. We want to make sure that you are safe and sound. Yep. So 2 ounces is where that's going to be kept. All right. So brave souls out there. Anyone here going to be using egg white in their drink? Anyone doing it? Okay, we got one. It's okay. It's okay. How's thinking about it? Okay. Well, let's talk about the egg just really quickly. And if for those who aren't doing it, go ahead and like give yourself like a 2-second rest. I'm going to talk about this right now. Eggs there's a few ways to get the egg white out. If you have a better way to get the egg white out than this, totally go ahead and do it. This is a trick I learned from a bartender in Cleveland back in 2011 when I sat at her bar, which was the Velvet Tango Room. If any of you have ever been there, if it's still around. So there's 2 parts to an egg. There is a larger part at the top and there's a more narrow tip at the bottom. There is a way to get the egg white out just by making what I call a little window to the world from the bottom of the egg. So what I like to do is tap the bottom just enough that you can crack it open. And I like to take out just a bit of it, a bit of the shell like this. Okay? Take out a bit of the shell. And from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the other part of my tin. Now, if you have only a cobbler shaker, I encourage you to crack this into another glass. We want to make sure we don't have any blood spots, right? Kosher. And number 2, we want to make sure there's no shell in the egg white. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tip that egg white over, and I'm going to let that egg white run out. Just like that. And what the other nice part of this is that it keeps the egg yolk inside. And I don't know about the rest of you, but you might be making some hamantaschen or something the next day or two, like I am. And one of my recipes calls just for egg yolk. Yep. And now you can keep that, right? I'm going to keep it. And it actually keeps just fine if you put it back in your cartridge into your fridge. Keeps well for about 3 days after. So once the egg is open, you can definitely still use that egg yolk for a few days after. Or maybe you're making chalot. You need to whip up a little egg yolk, wash it, right? You can do that. Okay, so my egg white looks good. Great. If you have done that and you're ready to go, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to place the whole cocktail together in a shaker without ice, no ice. So anybody who is not doing egg white, just hold on again for 1 second. We are gonna do something called a dry shake, and a dry shake is shaking up your cocktail, okay, with no ice. And it doesn't have to be for a long time. We really just wanna do this for about like 7 seconds, just enough to fluff up the egg. Because what you're doing is you're heating up this drink because there's no ice in there. And what happens with heat, things expand. There you go. Science, right? We all remember that. Science is my worst grade in high school. Just want to throw that out there. And now science is my life. The egg expands. So what you get, and I'll tilt this down, is you're going to get this nice foaminess in your cocktail shaker. Okay? So just give it a light shake. And once we do this, now what we are going to do as a collective, as a group, is we're going to get our lowball glasses out. Ta-da! We are going to add ice into our lowball glasses and some ice into our shaker. Again, you don't want too much ice in your shaker. And you want your ice to be about halfway, if not 3/4 of the way, in your lowball glass. For people who have egg white, please only add about ice halfway in your lowball glass. But let's all ice up everything. We are about to shake. Shake this again. And now that you know how to shake, we can all kind of do it at our own pace. So what I'd like you to do is, again, do a 7-second shake when you're ready. So at your leisure, when you're ready, let's shake it for 7 seconds. Ready, set, 1, 2, 3, Awesome. All right. Get that open. For those of you who did egg white, you're going to see that you have this really lovely fluff at the top of your drink. Woo! Look at that. I got some lovely egg white at the top of my drink. And it will take a second. It actually will separate a little bit more. There you go. And if you did shake with egg white, what I'll say is after we are done with this lesson, please get your shaker washed pretty fast because it does leave residue. Now here's the fun part. This is we're going to learn how to layer wine into our cocktail, okay? So for everybody, no matter what, you should have a drink that has their cocktail with ice. And now we have our wine. You can do this without a spoon, but what I find is that sometimes people pour really, really fast, and therefore the wine doesn't layer as evenly or as well. So what I like to do is sometimes use a spoon, a cocktail spoon or a regular spoon, and I'm going to slowly, very slowly, pour wine onto the spoon and drizzle it in a circular motion around the glass. And what I'm attempting to do, actually I'm gonna bring you closer because we should be up close and personal for this moment, okay? What I'm gonna be attempting to do is to make this wonderful layer of wine around my glass. Because at the end, what you should have is about an ounce, ounce and a half of wine floating at the top. And you have a cocktail that looks like this. It's like half and half. Now, whether you did egg white or not, it will float. It floats, I know. Let's see. Oh, that's gorgeous. Let's see. Yes, look at everybody's drinks. It's a Shushan Sour 2.0 because now what we've kind of done is we remember that at these feasts that they had in Shushan, these feasts that lasted months at a time, they always were drinking lots of wine. But let's get real. We're also supposed to get a little drunk on this holiday. So we kind of had the wine, the classy part on top, but the hard stuff's at the bottom, okay, which is the fun part. And now what you do is when you drink, it'll all start to mix together and incorporate. Just fun. So I think this time you can say charcoal because it's not majority wine, right? So Rabbi Luria, do you want to lead us through that bracha?
Sure, I have my dogs are joining us too, I think.
All right,
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nehiyah bidvaro.
Amen.
Amen.
And as you keep drinking it, you're gonna get sort of like wine at the start. You get the cocktail moving in, and you can also make lots of fun variations on this based upon changing out your jam style and your jam flavor, which is really great. But the biggest thing
It's a nice spin on something to do with your whiskey. I like this.
yes, something to do with all that whiskey you have.
Yeah, we put in fruits of the forest jam.
Yes.
Fruits of the forest.
Fruits of the forest. That's like an everything jam, right? It's like
Mhm.
okay, that's gonna be delicious, especially going with the wine on top. It's gonna be so good.
Yeah, it is.
It's really delicious.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. Okay, so I think the biggest thing here is my biggest thing is I like showing everybody how we can use the same ingredient in two different ways. So we have here is our opportunity to open up a bottle of wine and say I can make two different types of cocktails for all of you, because waste less, right, and waste not is what we like to say. And these are really fun and interactive. And what I will say is that if you want to do things like this with kids, right, you can definitely make like the first one, the Achashverosh's cup, can be made with a grape juice, which is very, very fun. And kids really like to do that. It's very interactive. Just also remember that because grape juice is going to be sweeter, that you want to pull back on the amount of honey that you add in there, right? And then when it comes to this drink, a lot of like the grape juices obviously will not float, and that is something to remember. So this one could be a little bit more difficult to execute there. So we might keep this as more of the adult beverages that we have there. Great. I always do like to keep time at the end for questions, because sometimes people have questions about cocktails or the drinks that we made and you need to go over something. So I leave the floor open for questions you might have. Or maybe no questions.
I don't have a question, Pam, but it's always nice seeing you, and you're always so much fun and impart such interesting information. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You just brought some joy to a somewhat dreary Tuesday afternoon. So I appreciate that.
Well, the snow melted, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. Yeah, I drove. I was home and I went to go visit my grandma in Youngstown over the weekend. So when I was driving in, we just like hit this wall of snow about like an hour away. I was like, oh no. But it wouldn't be a visit to Northeast Ohio without it, right?
True.
This is a great way to prepare for the holiday, as my dog will attest to. And I have fig preserves that I use, and it's delicious.
I love fig. Fig's one of my favorite types of jam to use. I always have it in my refrigerator, which is really, really, really fun and really delicious. And I think the other fun part is like, again, if you're entertaining a bunch of people and you want to make the Shushan Sour 2.0, again, this is something that you could put all the ingredients into a pitcher and really massively stir it up, and then right before people come over, you can stir it up, pour some out, shake it up, and then layer the wine on top. Yeah. And that is also, again, these are home hacks that you can use when you're entertaining for groups, which is great because you don't want to have to be making everything piece by piece when you are in the moment. When you get flustered.
It's really good.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did that.
Delicious, especially since we opened a bottle of wine a few days ago and it wasn't as good as we like, so this made it even better.
Perfect.
That is the other fun. That's the other fun part, because sometimes we open bottles of wine and we're like, this is not it. And if you do find yourself in that predicament, now you do have a recipe that you can say, you know what, I can kind of make this sangria-esque type of situation on the fly really quickly. And if you don't have honey for any reason, you can always use some sugar and turn that into a syrup. Use that very quickly. You can also add in some more flavors here if you wanted to make some specialty syrups. I wouldn't sleep on the idea of making like a blueberry syrup or a strawberry syrup, or maybe even a raspberry syrup. Sometimes you can find those syrups like you use for Italian sodas, things like that in the grocery, and you can also use those in place of the honey syrup as well, which is also an additional wonderful fruit note that you can add into this drink.
Okay. I was just wondering, can you use agave instead of the honey?
Totally. Agave can always be used as a substitution for the honey. And agave tends to be a little bit thinner anyways. Just do know that like you still would want to thin out that agave a bit with water because it still is condensed and like with all that sweetness. Oh, look, everyone's
Yeah, I have a general bartending question. There's someone in my house who likes dirty martinis. Recently, and yeah, do you have a recommendation of a vodka dirty martini? Like how to make it even better than I make it already?
So dirty martinis are one of the few that I actually like to shake. And it's because we're adding the olive brine into it, and when we're adding the brine, it opens up the flavor way better if you shake them up. No, thank you, Sandy. So I do like to shake my vodka martinis. I do like to use a vodka that's going to be a little bit more weighty or have some more depth to it. So I do like to use vodkas that maybe have like more of a rye base because they're spicier. I tend to find a lot of vodkas that are wheat based to be pretty boring in that drink. It's a personal thing, and sometimes corn is also very boring. Potato is going to be a lot more earthy, so that also sometimes will work really nicely with the olive notes. Please, the few things to please make sure is that like use fresh olive brine. Like if you have olives that have been sitting around for a really, really long time in your fridge, that olive juice is just not going to be so great. Your olive juice is only as fresh as the olives themselves. If you find yourself in a pinch and you're like, I want a dirty martini, but I have no olives, the easiest thing to do is to create a saline solution with just some salt and water. And you can also use that in place and shake up a martini that way. But another fun thing is if you can find especially kosher sherry, dry sherry, things like Fino or Amontillado, you can obviously use a little bit of that too, and that dryness and the salinity from the sherry mixes nicely as well. Yes.
Pam, when you said the different vodkas, does it say on the bottle? I mean, what they're made from?
Yeah, so some of them will say, most of them will say on the bottle what they're made with,
Oh,
what they're made
okay.
from as well. And if you don't know, the easiest thing to do is just to do a little Google search and say rye-based vodkas, potato-based vodkas.
Okay, so tell us the name brand of a rye-based vodka, because you got me interested.
The easiest one for you to pick up would be like Belvedere is probably the
Okay.
easiest and most well-known rye-based vodka. Yeah.
I like Belvedere.
I had no idea. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I didn't either.
Well, I want to thank you, Pam. I'm very appreciative of you. And this was amazing and fun and delicious.
Yeah.
And
Good.
a great way to lead into Purim, to get us ready for tomorrow night. Wow. Megillah reading tomorrow night. There you go.
Well,
With
I
your
wish
Hamantash and plenty.
I wish you all a Chag Purim Sameach. I hope that this year Purim is as Hamantash and you bite into. I hope we all have the ability to celebrate together, and to when we dress up that we are bringing a lot of good cheer after the past few years that we've had. And let's just remember always that the story of Purim is one of perseverance and one of standing up against people who are trying to put you down, and really being the bigger person and taking chances. That is what the story of Purim is about, and it's a story about our survival as people. And I think especially in these days, with the continuous rise in anti-Semitism and everything we're facing, we have to always remember that we as Jews have been here for thousands and thousands of years. We're not going anywhere, and we are fighters and we're survivors. So we celebrate it in these moments, especially with these stories. So Chag Sameach to everybody.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much, Pam.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you.
Holiday. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.